Welcome, everyone. I'm Keisha G, and this is Another Black Girl. It's my space where I am highlighting the passions, pursuits, and general excellence of other Black women and girls that I think are amazing. So today, I am joined by someone very special to me and many other people in my life. When I joined Time Incorporated, the media company in New York, back in 2002, the universe smiled on me and made sure my life intersected with a beautiful soul. At a time when I was an impressionable little country girl feeling unsteady in a strange new world, I met Rhonda Joy McLean. Now, Maya Angelou has said, I have learned that people forget what you said. They will forget what you did, but they will never forget how you made them feel. And when I remember those days starting out my career, I remember feeling more peace, more safety, and more love in her presence. Her unwavering support of me over the years has sometimes looked like her extending her network to me at times that I needed to talk to people with more experience, or sometimes it was just a hand on the shoulder that said, I trust you, I support you, I'm excited for you. So I had to have Rhonda as one of my first interviews in this space. So with that, welcome Rhonda to Another Black Girl.
Thank you so much, Ms. Keisha, Sister Keisha. It is my honor and privilege to be with you today.
Wonderful. So before I ask you a whole bunch of questions and we start entering the Rhonda Joy gem droppery of it all.
Uh-oh, that sounds good. Oh my goodness.
It felt good to say. Felt good to say. I'm going to share with the people just a few top notes, because your whole bio is something that I'm just going to need people to go check out for themselves, because it's quite long and impressive. But for those who need to know, Rhonda Joy McLean is president and CEO of RJMLEADS, LLC. It's a leadership consulting company that she launched in 2019. She's the former Deputy General Counsel of Time Incorporated that I just mentioned. She was managing 1/3 of the law department and oversaw legal compliance and data privacy protocols for over 200 clients and 22 brands for nearly 20 years. So we're talking about experience. She is a co-author of 2 popular books on leadership development for women that she wrote with her friends and business partners, Elaine, Meryl Brown, and Marsha Haygood, 2 more Black girls for you to know. And the book's entitled The Little Black Book of Success. You know I have a copy over here. And not only do I have a copy, it's personalized to Keisha, my sister, my friend. She also is principal of Leads LLC, a company that she runs with her co-authors. So with that, let's just get right into this conversation with my sister, my friend, Rhonda Joy McLean. Rhonda, I want to hear about the Rhonda before the bio, because there's so much story there before we're entering into these professional spaces. I mean, you have 4 degrees, 1 from Yale Law, but the stories that you could tell go even before that. I want to hear about the little girl, Rhonda. What were you like as a little girl?
Well, thank you. And thank you again for having me. But before I begin, I really want to just say to you and about you, Keisha is one of the people that lights up the room when she comes into the room. And I remember meeting her at Time Inc. in 2002. And I had only been there 3 years, but a number of sisters had reached out to embrace me as the first Black woman attorney hired by that company, which seems, unreal that would have happened so late. Yes. But at any rate, there I was. And so I really have always, through my mom, her sisters, my family, my grandmothers, and the sisterhood, which I'm a great believer in, believe that when one rises, we all rise. So I don't feel competitive. I feel that I am emboldened and uplifted by your success. So I'm grateful that you are inviting me to talk a little bit about me and my journey. And I am just thankful for you. So God bless you. And thank you for having me.
Thank you.
So the little girl, well, I was born in Chicago in 1952. I think it's important to say my age. I was 68, August 15th. I'm very grateful. I feel like I've earned every minute of that age. I don't want to be no other age, and I don't want to go backwards. I just want to go forward. But I think it's important because often people don't state their age. And also there's, I think, all these myths around old age in America. I think unlike many other cultures where getting older is respected and even, treasured and revered, not all the way, because in some of our communities, we still respect our elders and take care of them. But all I will say is I just feel like we're getting better. I'm grateful to be here, even with all the chaos and confusion that we are facing. I will just say that my parents were born in the North. Daddy was born in Chicago out west, and Mom in Buffalo, New York. And they met at Talladega College and HBCU, which still exists. My father was a staff sergeant in World War II and served in Japan and the Philippines. And my mom was the oldest of 5 who worked very, very hard as a church musician from a young age. And I followed in her footsteps for a great many years. But she really wanted to go to college. My grandparents had not been able to go on my mom's side. So my grandmother, Eva Bell Coleman Coles, moved heaven and earth to make sure that her firstborn would get there and would help all other 4 children go, which she did. So my mom, Georgiana Virginia Coles McLean, who is 94 years old, watch out. She weighs 98 pounds. I am scared of her still. I did not make a move that I think my mother, of which I think she might disapprove. She's an amazing lady. I just spent a week with her in North Carolina. She's living semi-independently in our childhood home, and we are blessed beyond measure to have her.
Beautiful.
But she received a scholarship. She worked for 2 years between high school and going to college, so to make sure that she would have the funds. So then when she got there, my dad was coming back from World War II and was going to college on the GI Bill. And there was this cute little lady from Buffalo. And they met, and that was that. So they courted for 5 years as music students, and then graduated and got married in 1951. Graduated in 1950, the 2 shortest people in the class. My dad was 5'2", my mom was 5'1". I'm 5'0".
And my younger I loved you. I'm 5'3". I found my people.
I've been this size, this age, this height since I was 12. So, but my brother, who is the towering giant in our family, who's 5 years younger than him, he is 5'4". But he is the towering giant in our family. Let's just be clear. And we're very proud of him. My parents really, I think, thought that after they received their degrees and, they each went back home to their respective cities and worked for another year to pay for the wedding. So they worked. And then when Mom, was in Buffalo, they would not honor the degree. So even though this was a degree from an accredited institution, the school boards in the North did not recognize these degrees. And apparently this was not uncommon at that time in the early 50s. So my mother went to Chicago after the marriage and lived with my father and his parents, my grandmother, Madeline Roberta Alexander, who was she was 4'11", tough as nails. So
I love how you say the whole name.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, I'm about my family. You'll hear that as we go on. I'm standing on them. So I believe that we're all standing on the people who raised us and a whole lot of people. Yeah. But I'm proud of my family and grateful for them, and grateful that I knew my grandparents all the way through. Both of my grandmothers lived until I graduated from law school in 1983. And one grandmother wasn't able to come, but my mother's mother was there with her church suit on, with a hat on, gloves, and her purse. And she stood to make sure she could see me from the time they called the age.
Yes.
Until Rhonda Joy McLean. She stood there. Usually I'm gonna hold on, not gonna cry. But that was just an amazing time. She was 87 years old.
Oh my gosh.
87 years old. So, God is good. So the point of all this, I've kind of truncated, is that my parents did not get the jobs that they had expected and were not able to teach, which is what they felt born to do. So I was born in Chicago in 1952. And they were, trying to figure out how to get launched. in their respective careers. So my mother's college roommate's father was head of the music department at North Carolina Central University, another well-known HBCU in Durham, North Carolina. And she said, well, you know, there is a segregated school system here. So there are thousands of Black schools, K through 12, that are really longing for well-qualified teachers. So you could come here for a year or two. And, you know, you got, you know, by this time I was, I don't know, maybe a month old, but at any rate, they both were recruited. And when I was 6 weeks old, they moved to Smithfield, North Carolina.
Went down south.
Yeah, about 30 minutes from Raleigh, which is right in the middle of North Carolina. And there they stayed. I think their plan was to be there 2 years, buy their first home, which they did. And then they thought they would move back either to Buffalo or to Chicago. Well, they never did. Wow. They never did. And my brother was born in that town in 1957. But every summer, we went to see our people. So our people were in Buffalo or Chicago. So my poor little dad, because mama couldn't drive then. And so daddy drove hours. This was before the interstate highways existed, before I-95. So 2-lane highways, 36 hours, little tiny man with a little pea head staring over the wheel in our Oldsmobile, driving to Buffalo. Ooh. And my brother and I would always get in trouble because we would be, because we had 13 cousins whom we loved like siblings, and we're all still close today. So anyway, all of that to say, you know, during that time, a lot of people were sending their children south to be with their grandparents and family during the summer. We did just the opposite and migrated north, and also went up to Canada because Buffalo's just over the border. So I spent a lot of time in Toronto and Stratford-on-Avon. And what I saw as a little girl is that there was a distinct difference between how people spoke to each other and melded together, and how little girls like me who asked lots and lots and lots of questions were handled. In the South, you were told to kind of, you know, listen, get in the background, you talk too much, you talk too fast, you walk. So I was always in trouble in my time.
Can't take up too much air as a child in the South.
Be seen but not heard.
Yeah.
But in the North, and particularly in Canada, it wasn't that way. People didn't seem to mind that I was curious, inquisitive. I read all kinds of things. Always, I'm a great avid book reader today. But I'm so grateful. My parents always instilled in my brother and myself pride in ourselves, pride in our family, faith in God, faith in the community, activism in the community. You know, whatever little bit you have, you share that with someone else because, you know, you're blessed to be here. So I'm just grateful. I think I have a firm foundation, and I'm doing my best to pass that on in whatever way that I can. So in 1965, although Brown v. Board, as we know, was rendered in 1954 when I was 2 years old, North Carolina did nothing at all. To enact it. So nothing changed.
They said, thank you very much, but no thank you.
Yes, as did quite a few of the southern states. So it wasn't until the school boards began to be sued by the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, they started bringing lawsuits to say, you're out of compliance with federal law, get it together. So then, you know, the individual school districts kind of set up and said, well, we guess we're going to have to do something. So at the end of the 8th grade, I took home a little note to my parents that said, the front of it said freedom of choice. And during that summer, I was 12 years old, had just finished the 8th grade. And we sat at our kitchen table, and my parents said, there's no question, you should not be, be going way some other school way over here. Because then it had been illegal, of course, to go to a white school, to congregate, all the things that Jim Crow is known for were very true in our town, and the KKK was quite active in our county. So there was some intimidation, even harassment. But I don't think anyone knew, and my parents, we thought we were making a private decision that I would go to Smithfield High, which was literally, I could almost walk there from our home. But there were 2 other families making the same decision, 2 other little Black girls. So in August of 1965, the 3 of us unknowingly met on the steps. My parents didn't even go because they went to integrated schools.
Oh, wow.
But to them, it was no big thing. They went to work. I got a ride with someone.
I just got chills. I didn't realize you went without your parents.
Myself, and I was dropped off. And let me tell you, for 40 years, my parents apologized to me for not taking me. They had just
they didn't no concept that this was going to be,
No, and there was a sheriff with a gun. The students were all outside. There were parents who were against us. There were signs saying horrible things. And there was, a literally rednecked principal. His neck was red. He really was not a nice man, did not want to be there, which was why the sheriff was there to make sure that we could actually enter the school. So everything, if you've seen Eyes on the Prize, if you know anything about the Little Rock Nine, that's what our experience was like.
Yeah. I think it's so powerful that you tell your story and that experience, because I think people they read about Ruby Bridges in textbooks, and the pictures are all black and white, and it feels like it's so long ago. And I'm like, Ruby is on Instagram. She is still with us, and part of this is not that long ago. And so I think that it became so much more real to me when I left Deep South Louisiana and I met you. And I remember at some point I found out about this story that you had, integrated the school where you grew up. I'm like, yeah, it made it so much more real. Like someone was telling me the story, a human being of the years of 2000 and whatever is sitting here saying that she had to integrate a school. And it's not some long, long time of ancient yore. This is us now. This is people in our lifetime have had this experience. And so I am so glad that you tell that story and share that part of your life, because I can't imagine reliving those feelings over and over as you tell it. But just know that it's powerful for people to know that our people who have gone through this are still here with us.
Well, thank you. And there was a time when I didn't talk about it so much because it was painful. We were separated. I was 13 by the time we began school, and Jacqueline and Pat, with whom I'm still quite friendly, and they were 14. And one was in my church, the other was in a different church. We had not gone to school together before, so we knew each other, but we weren't, all that close. Jackie and I were friends, but we were happy to see each other. But then they separated us almost immediately. Separate homerooms. I don't know what they thought, little Black girls, because they weren't any bigger than me. And I don't know what kind of riot they thought we could start, but they were obviously terrified of us congregating.
Being together.
So we were separated and rarely saw each other. Occasionally we were in classes together. But what we learned, these are two things I want to share that have governed my entire life. The first is, and you know what you're doing where you are in your life, in your work, and in your career. Sometimes you really just have to stand in the face of irrationality, insanity, racism, every other kind of ism, foolishness.
Yes.
And I find that a lot of the isms are based on fear and ignorance. And sometimes it's willful ignorance because the data is there. There's no reason for you to block out whole races of people. Nobody is a whole race of people. A person is a person. Some are good, some are not. You have to know them, get to know them. So it was just astonishing to us, these three little girls, that a whole school of people could make a decision about us without knowing anything about us. So we resolved that we would help each other. I was very good at words and writing, history, loved books. Jacqueline was the math whiz and went on to become the head of the finance department of a major energy company for like 30 years. Pat was good at the sciences and went on to become a chemist and researcher. So we met every night, literally every night that first year as freshmen at each other's homes. Sometimes we would spend the night because their books, we'd never seen their books before, the lab equipment. I mean, it just felt like they were light years ahead of us in terms of the quality of books, equipment, and just learning. So we just felt behind. And we thought the only weapon we had was academic excellence. That's all we had to offer.
That's a lot.
That's a lot. And we helped each other. So the two lessons are sometimes you have to stand alone. You're in that homeroom. People make fun of you, spit on you, call you names. You have to stand up and stand for yourself. But at the same time, at night, we came together. You have to learn when to collaborate. When can your skill, maybe you know something I don't know, and maybe together we can be better and stronger.
What a beautiful lesson to learn early about the power of coming together with other people. I think that I got that more crisply. I think I did it naturally as a person, but at some point I realized that that was a really powerful thing that I wanted to do in my life with more intention, which is bringing people together when I saw that one maybe had information that the other one needed, or this one knows somebody that this one needs. And just I wanted to be that person for other people once I saw the power of all this person needs is some more information over here. They just don't know XYZ yet. You seem to know XYZ and probably a little bit of elemental P. So I just bring them together. And it's just so nice to see people supporting each other if the ego or hubris aside and just come together and help each other. So that is a beautiful lesson to learn early, and just picturing a whole bunch of little Black girls, 3 little Black girls supporting each other every night. That is a painting in my mind right now.
Our parents took turns driving us to each other's homes, and we had sleepovers. But I think, just knowing, even though I knew that Jacqueline was down the hall in Miss So-and-so's room and Pat was over here in Mr. So-and-so's room, we ate lunch together. No one would eat with us. But of course, the workers in the cafeteria were Black. Some of them went to our churches. So they were watching over us. And then also there was a couple, a married couple. I can see them now, who were the janitors. I don't know that I ever saw it anywhere else where it was a married couple that cleaned the whole school. They would call my mother. They would call our parents if they felt like there was anything untoward. One time somebody spray painted my locker. I couldn't get to my books. It was one of the few times that I cried publicly because we tried hard to be very stoic. But, my books were my lifeblood. I couldn't do my homework. So I just freaked out. So my dad had to come. We had to go to the principal's office. They had to get a welder to open it up. But, people would leave notes in our lockers saying horrible things. But I'm telling you, family, faith, friends, they will get you through. They will get you through.
Another word I would use to talk about you would be rooted. When I met you, you did feel very rooted and steady, and like your sense of operating was coming from a place that wasn't the same as other people in the space where we met. I feel like there were a lot of people leading through fear or intimidation. And I was running into that a little bit. And it was kind of like, okay, I got to figure out how to navigate this place. And so every time there was a time we had to explain to people, we had to bring creative pieces. People would make advertisements and whatnot, and you had to get them checked by the legal team to make sure you weren't about to step into some things. Anytime it was time for us to get something checked, I was like, I'll go talk to Miss, I'll go talk to Rhonda. Right? She's like, I'll go take it because it was like a moment to be in an environment and with someone who felt very much like you didn't have something that you were trying to prove every time you were talking to people. There was just this peace and this sense of calm and steadiness. And I see now where it comes from. It's so rooted. And I feel like it must have given you this sense of power in your life. And I feel like I'm trying to come up with questions, but I'm just this cheerleading. I'm like, this is where the power comes from. She's so rooted. And yes, you have roots and you have wings.
I do. And I thank you for that. I really do. But I want to be honest. I didn't always understand that. And both my brother and I skipped grades during school. We were bright. Our parents taught us to read when we were 3. And so some teachers welcomed us. Other teachers did not. Some teachers refused to teach me. They thought that it would be too challenging for them. So my mother, who taught music in the school that I attended from K through 8, and let me just say, it's not always the best thing to be in the school where your mama is, because people will go and tell your mama when you're not doing what you're supposed to do. Anyway, right.
I know some things about that too.
And so I would get punished twice. The teacher, as you can see, I love to talk, so I would talk in class. I also had a real problem. My mother, God bless her, every morning made breakfast at the time you're supposed to make it, which is, what I think the time it is where you are now. That's too early for me. I can't at 7 a.m. Now, tea, I can have my tea, But so she would make what we call cheese toast, and it would just be some cheese and butter on bread and slide it in the oven. Well, I loved it, but I refused to eat it. So I wrapped it in a handkerchief, took it to school, and then around 10 o'clock, which is when I believe civilized people, I would put my head down because we had those old desks with the hole in the bottom where your book went. So so I would put down there, take a little bite of sandwich. So of course it would come up in crumbs with the so then I would be sent to the principal's office for eating in class.
Oh, man.
And then my mom would come and take me behind the curtain in her office and give me a little beat.
Oh,
so
man.
all I'm saying is,
Mom, I'm just trying to have my brunch.
But I just want to say, when you talked about collaboration and being rooted, the other piece that I think is important for us to speak about, and there are two aspects of it. I had the very great privilege of watching my mother, the oldest of five. She had 3 sisters and 1 brother. And they were really, although personality-wise, very, very different. The other 4 remained in Buffalo and raised their children there. But it was when we would get there, it was like my mother never left. It was like really, my brother and I felt like we had 10 parents because there were 5 couples, all of whom were married decades, all of whom raised children. And similarly to my parents, church anchored, community based, very faith filled, and very, very, this word we would not have used, but I know it now, philanthropic. I mean, we don't use that word in the Black community because, there's all this negative stuff written about us that we don't help. Well, yes, everybody I knew helped people raise children. People, they didn't do it formally, so it wasn't a formal adoption. But people raised nieces, they sent them to college. So my mother and her sisters, unlike, they just, when mama was in charge, everybody did what she said. When Aunt Naomi was in charge, everybody, including mama, who was 2 years older or 10 months older, would do what she said. So this whole notion of the flexibility of leadership, you be the chief, I'll be the Indian, and then I'll be the chief. And I just saw that my whole life. So I really approach leadership to the extent that I can, collaboratively. Now, sometimes you can't do that because some folks ain't ready to collaborate.
They didn't get the lesson.
They didn't get that. But I did. And of course, I've seen wonderful managers. I've seen horrible managers, Black, white, male, female, old and young. But that opportunity to observe people respecting other people and saying, okay, you know how to do this better than I do, so I'll follow you. That has been a great help to me. And I want to just say on the books, and I want to just thank you for holding up the book. This is our workbook, which we published in 2017. It accompanies the book, but both books were written in full collaboration.
Yes.
With Elaine and Marsha. We just met earlier this week by phone. We're in 3 different states. Our lives have evolved and are complicated and busy, but we've been friends 20 years. And I'm just so grateful the books are still doing well and we're still being asked to speak about them. But our books came about organically in the same way.
How did you all decide to start who came up with the idea? Let's write a book together. How did that happen?
Elaine Meryl Brown, who is now head of the advertising unit at Comcast down in Atlanta. But at the time when I met her, she was on the creative side at HBO, where she was for more than 20 years. She was a VP there, and she helped to launch the Showtime channel that we all watch.
Oh, snap.
So she's awesome, but she's on the creative side. So she's, she has lots of ideas. But I met her because she hosted a networking dinner. And in March of 2000, I had been in my job just a few months. And again, first Black woman, head down, working hard, getting there at 7 a.m., leaving there at 7 p.m. I'm like, I don't want them to think I'm not working.
Indeed.
So then Marsha, who was VP of HR over in the movie business, all of us were executives in what was then the Time Warner Global Lexicon. That was when Dick Parsons was in charge, 85,000 employees worldwide, just this huge enterprise. But each of us were senior, but we were few and far between, and there were usually no other Black people in our departments or no other Black people at our level. And as you know, with all that you do, you can't just trust everybody, and you need somebody you can confide in. And that person may not be on your job.
Yes.
So Elaine went to a wonderful leadership development session. And out of it, she realized that she needed a network. So she just invited a number of people to dinner. She did not know me. Marsha and I had just met. And Marsha, I crashed the dinner. Marsha brought me with her.
Yes.
I was at my desk working. She said, get up. I know you're working. Get up. Come downstairs. Get in this taxi. I'm picking you up at 7. And then we went to dinner. And I met all these wonderful women. We're all still friends today, 20 years later this year. And we met quarterly. We called it GNO Girls Night Out.
Hello.
All Black women, all sister. And it was just, how are you doing? Do you think, you're being treated fairly? If not, what can we do? Do you want to rehearse some language you can use? I rehearsed asking for a raise, which is ladies. I rehearsed changing my position. I created a position that didn't exist in my department because I felt like there was a block in terms of moving forward because people never left. So, it was hard to advance. So, if you can't go this way, go that way.
Make a space.
Go that way. So I love Shirley Chisholm said, if there's not room for you at the table, bring your own chair.
Here we go.
So, hey, but they really coached me. And so it was really a number, almost 7 or 8 years. We just met. We did things together. We went to Broadway shows. Some of them had known each other for years, so their families vacationed together. I was the new kid on the block, but they were wonderful to me, very warm. So out of those quarterly dinners came conversations. All of us were mentoring other people. So we were meeting lovely people like you, smart, beautiful, brilliant, some of whom were kind of stumbling along the way, not having the most smooth experience. And we were like, how can we help them? And then we found that when we shared what we were sharing with these young sisters, we were saying some of the same things, not in the same way. So eventually, Elaine wrote 2 murder mysteries, and Random House published them. So she had an agent. She knew, none of us had published anything. We didn't know nothing. Mm-hmm. So she then wrote her own book. She was a divorced mom, with a grown son. At that time, he was a teenager. So she said, I really am looking for a book on leadership for Black teenagers because I'm just not seeing anything and I want to give something to my son. So then she decided to try to write it herself.
I love it.
That's where it came from. And then her own editor said, there are 10,000 books on leadership. What about your book? I need something unique about your book to sell it. Nobody's going to want another book on leadership. So she then came to our GNO dinner and said, well, I'm trying to write this book. Will you help me? And Marsha and I said, well, we don't know what you're talking about. But okay.
Count us in.
That's how.
That is what I love, the part of that story where Marsha got your head up from the desk and said, let's get in the cab. And I'm sure eventually you would have found your way to one of these dinners. But I hear in that, don't miss your moments, those little moments that can make a difference in your life, because a lot of us are working so hard at 7 to 8, 9, whatever it was going to be, just trying to work twice as hard, that whole thing. I love that she, picked your head up and took you in that cab, and things could have, been wonderful in a whole different direction. But I love that it took this direction because you met these women, and now a lot of people have this little Black book of success. I'd never bought a book so fast in my life. I was like, Rhonda is going to sit here and tell us all the things. I think there was something in here. I try to remember. It may have been like the next day I went and took the candy ball off my desk. I was like, oh no, I'm up here. I'm up here nurturing in the run, and I gotta shift. And I was taking the mama-isms and to heart. Because, really just soaking up, like, am I doing this right? So you all really did put something together that is something that we needed, something that a lot of us needed to see. So I'm glad that you got in the cab, Rhonda.
Me too. And I have to tell you, we wrote the book that we wish we had because we didn't have a book. And some of us had mentors, some of us didn't. Marsha, really, who grew up in the Bronx and, she credits her mother, and she lost her mother at a young age. So she credits her mother with giving her the firm foundation. And Elaine says the same thing about her family. So all of us, strong moms. And unfortunately, Marsha lost her mom and is very close now to her sister, who is quite a bit older. So they're very close. And then Elaine and I still have our moms, and they're the same age, 94.
Wow.
So we are just, blessed and great.
Still scared of mama though, even in your 60s.
I'm
Even
telling you,
if,
she may be little. She's small but mighty, let me tell you. Small but mighty.
what
And
are
I'm
the,
trying to be like her when I grow up.
well, tell me more about your mom. What are the things that that impress you most, or the things you want to be like when you think about your mother?
Well, Georgiana, Virginia, her name came from her two grandmothers. And so that's why there's such strong names. It was a way to pull the families together. And she was, the first born grandchild on either side. So everyone was very excited when she arrived. And she was quite smart, grew up, she's a Depression baby, so they didn't have much in the way of material things. But my grandfather, Leroy Raymond Cole Sr., grew up outside of Petersburg in Dinwiddie County on a farm. He was the oldest of 8. And, as the firstborn would have, it was quite a profitable farm and he would have inherited it, but he hated farming. And so he took the risk of leaving the farm to go to Buffalo to build a better life. And he had met my grandmother, but she was a city girl in Richmond. He was a country boy. She was not interested in him, not at all.
Okay.
And she sang at revivals, outdoor under the tent. Eva Bell was singing, honey.
Hello.
So singing for the Lord. So he was just very excited about her. So we have all these, we even have a picture of he and his younger brother, because both of them tried to court her on horseback in a little cart pulled by horses.
Oh, imagine those dinner conversations. Oh, no, sir.
So she was not having it.
I saw her first.
That's right. And so he pursued her, Leroy did, and begged her to wait for him. He went to Buffalo. He was there 5 years. He worked in the steel mines, which were in Buffalo. It was a huge steel business there. He was a Pullman porter, and he sold insurance. And he had just a 6th grade education, but he was just a very industrious man. So I want you to know, because my grandmother said that all her friends said, don't wait on this man, he's not coming back. Okay. The other thing that we should just put on out there, my grandmother was the color of your hair. So she was black and beautiful. My grandfather was the color of our teeth. So he was very fair with straight hair. And this was during a time where his family was not into her at all.
Oh, I can imagine.
And so, and she was like, well, and she was, Miss City Girl in Richmond. She had some education. She was the one who wanted to be a music teacher, and just they didn't have money for her to go to college. He came back after 5 years. He wrote letters. We have their letters that they wrote to each other during those 5 years. My mom's younger sister, Marie, helped my grandmother write the letter. So we have all those letters. Can you imagine?
I can't imagine. I'm sitting here listening to you telling me in detail these stories.
Oh, yeah,
like, how did she get these stories?
We know. So, so he came back. They got married in my grandmother's living room in Richmond, Virginia. And then she moved to Buffalo. And that's where my mother was born and all of her other children. So my mom then is standing on that foundation. Strong family, strong faith, strong friends, because during that time, because the Buffalo and that surrounding area, there was a lot of opportunity, and it's part of the Great Migration. So a lot of Southern people, families, were particularly young men, were leaving farm life and going to the city. So they bought their first house, and then they bought a second house behind that house, rented that house out, and that is how they helped to send all 5 children to college. My mama worked. She played for her mother to sing, and I did the same thing for my mama to sing. But many things I take away from her, again, there is this whole fierce faith and the ability to just stand on it in the midst of a lot of uncertainty. My grandmother left her whole life to go to Buffalo, and we heard that she cried every day for a year, that she did not like Buffalo. She didn't like the city. Man. She had left. She didn't feel like it was culturally, Richmond was a rich center of Black culture and heritage and all of that. Harlem Renaissance was trickling over and down. Not happening in Buffalo.
She's like, no for the Buffalo.
Yeah. So, but she put it together, got active in her church, got active in her community. And like most people of her generation, she was a Republican because it was Lincoln's party. But she was active. We all treasured the right to vote. I could imagine not voting. I would never miss a vote. I would never miss an election. It don't matter what kind, special, not special, your mom. If it's an election,
regular,
there.
original recipe, extra spicy election, we doing them all.
This fierceness of both of them, and the same thing on Daddy's side. There was this passion for making your life better. And then as you learned a little more, share whatever you learned with your folks. So that's what
empower other people.
Yeah, so Mama was like that, very close to her sisters all throughout her life. And right now, unfortunately, we only have Mama left, the oldest, and the youngest, Aunt Marie, who's 86, who was my in-family mentor. But Mom was known as the enterprising one. So she was who went to try to figure things out, to go, ask for this, to go see about this scholarship or see about this source of funding for the community, active in her church, active in her community, there were social clubs in the community to help young girls progress and learn about themselves. And then she also worked in a skin factory making pork skins and wax lips, if you know about wax.
I remember the wax lips, yes.
She made them. She worked in the factory. That was where she worked, after high school for those 2 years to earn enough money then to go on to Talladega.
Yeah, well, I think you did succeed in becoming like your mother, and that you do empower other people. So you already have her in you, and you've been doing it. So to the point where sometimes I know that you are very active in like many organizations, giving time, knowledge to a lot of places. One of the things I've often wondered about you is how, because it seemed like you were very gracefully navigating a lot of different activities and organizations and pursuits and passions. You have a lot that you have going at many times. I wonder, like, how do you manage your Rhonda time? There's only so many hours in a day.
Well, thank you for that. And I had meant to mention this earlier and got excited and went off the rails. But I do want to talk frankly about depression. I've been hospitalized twice for depression. And part of that came out of, I think, during those high school years. And I also went to a college that had only a few Black students. So we had a rough time there because it was civil rights movement, women's movement. There was just Vietnam War. There was a lot happening. So what I learned to do that I think was not so healthy was to tamp down how I really felt and present this very stoic image. And both of the other girls, we all found out we didn't talk about this stuff to our parents at all. We didn't want them to think that they had made the wrong decision by sending us to this school. We also, as much as we were together, we didn't tell each other. So one of my friends had an ulcer her sophomore year in high school, and the other lost most of her hair and ended up wearing a wig. And then I thought I was fine because I was working and Zooming and going to grad school at night and woo-hoo. And then I began to have these racing thoughts. I couldn't sleep. I was just anxious. It was an unfocused anxiety. I couldn't really articulate it. And of course, again, the stoicism, I didn't want anybody. I'm a Leo. I should explain that. I'm a firstborn of a firstborn of a firstborn. I'm usually the go-to person.
Yeah.
So it's hard for me to say I need to go to somebody myself. So I had a rough time. So I was grateful to God for two friends who helped me to see that I really needed to speak with someone. So I went into treatment fairly early. I was in my late 20s when I went to my first therapist to begin to try to unravel the sort of complicated layer of, just who is Rhonda and who is she seeking to be. So that has been a great healing force for me. Therapy, faith, meditation, although my thoughts race so much, I don't meditate too well, I'll be honest. It's hard. But I do want to say that I'm hoping, and I think your generation, you're much better, I hope, at saying, I need a me day. I need a mental health day. I need to take my family and go out to see Mother Nature. It took a while for me.
Yeah. I think it took, I agree that I feel like I hear about it more now with the people in my age group. I will share, and I thank you for being vulnerable and sharing your story, because I think that we don't tell people, in a very visible way, some of these stories very often. when I was at Time Inc., there was a portion of that time, I was doing too much as well. I was feeling too much pressure to get it right, to succeed, to make the most of this opportunity. And I ended up having a lot of, I guess, as I was having unexplained health issues. My heart was racing, skipping beats, doing all. So at one point I was walking around with a heart monitor on under my clothes, going to work so that the doctor can try to assess when I was, what was triggering my heart to be, racing in the ways that it was. I was sleeping there sometimes at the office, like waking up in the morning, going to Dwayne Reed and buying underwear and going back because it was just like the pressure. And I didn't know how to manage it and how to stand up for myself. And so I was just taking it on, just trying to prove myself, and really just like getting to a point where I think the worst was I had gone to an offsite with one of the teams that I was on. And I was so depressed and didn't know that that's what was happening at the time. I completely drank a lot, too much, in a numbing exercise, I suppose, or what it was. But it was just like I lost control of myself so much that I was at this offsite. We were out in Maine somewhere. And I remember we got in or maybe in Long Island, I forget where we were, but we got on this little rickety little bus after the offsite on the beach. And I'm up there just like trying to not be there. Yes. Trying to not be where I was because it felt so bad. And let's just say the bumpy bus ride was not good. There were things that I left on that bus in front of everybody, publisher, associate publisher, everybody was on the bus. And they're just like, just vomit on this bus. Yeah. Low point. Woke up the next morning just sitting on the floor in tears with my roommate, late person who was there with me, her holding me. It's just like, pull yourself together, step strong. Yes. And you'll get through tomorrow. Yes. Show up, keep your back up. I got through that next day and totally showed up like, I'm okay. Got on the ferry with a gentleman who was, it was part of one of the brands that had a TV show. He was one of the producers on the TV show. He said to me, I can see how much pain you're in. And if you were my daughter, I would tell you to quit today. Yes. He's like, you're thinking it's you. It's not you. Like you're trying to fit yourself into a situation that's unhealthy. Yes. And I was deteriorating because of that. And I wish that I had taken the lesson of taking myself to that, getting into that low point. I wish I had gotten what I was learning in my 20s and figuring it out. But I think that it took me a long time, maybe like another decade before I was like, oh, I don't have to get that low. Yes. I don't have to. I can stop this before we are laying on the hotel room floor crying with one of your coworkers holding you. I can stop this before we get there. And it's not weak to make the decision to stop this, because I too, often I call it staying at the fair too long. Yeah. Or staying too long at the fair. Because it's, these same grandmothers, not all of the mama-isms, were, I won't say they weren't healthy, but some of them you have to not follow, because my grandmother was like, you make your bed, you lie in it. So that means, where you start, you finish. Well, that isn't always applicable in the world we're living in, which is a bit complex. So I had, I was laid off, was fired. Same thing. I remember, it's so interesting you talk about sitting on the floor. I literally was almost under the bed in my apartment. So unhappy, miserable, but didn't feel that I should leave the job because I was the first Black attorney they'd ever hired. Not Time Inc., it was a different place. But my girlfriends came. There they come.
Pulled me out by the ankles from under the bed, cleaned me up. They're like, you have to go back in there. Like, but I never want to see those white men again. I never, ever want to see that. Outing and hysterical. They're like, well, too bad. You have to go back in. And what they made me do, which I thought was insane, but which worked because I had not been out of law school that long. And I worked for 10 years before I went to law school. So I was in my 30s. I was 33, launching a legal career in a city that I'd never lived in before. I'm like, what was I thinking? But this was a few years later. But thank God for them, because what they helped me to see, because one of the things that happens when you get this anxious and you're trying to fit yourself into this mold that's not really meant for you, is that you forget your sense of self-worth, that you don't see your value. And what they said to me is, you're just as smart as you ever were. I've said this a lot to other sisters. You're just as smart as you were when you started. You just don't feel that way. So let's work on how can we get you back to feeling like the real you. And they made me write a proposal to do consulting work for the firm that had just fired me. I said, you have got to be out of your mind.
I love your friends.
Honey, woo, they wrote a proposal. They wrote a proposal. It was one page. Because what they said to me is, this was a law firm in New York, and they said, look, at that time, there was a lot of work for everybody. It was before, it was in the early 80s. So they said, look, there's a lot of work. There's got to be some work that people are not doing or that people don't want to do, because I had to pay bills. I had to pay my school loans. I had an apartment. I had a car. I'm like, oh my God. And I didn't want to ask anybody for help.
There you go.
All the reasons we discussed.
There you go.
I didn't tell anybody. I only told like one person. And she told one other person, and I laid her out for telling the other person. But then they were the ones that I went back in, and do you know they accepted my proposal?
Wow.
I worked for those people for another year, and during that time had an office, because they had an office that was off-site. So that meant while I was looking for work, I had, a secretary, because they had somebody who would answer that phone, even though I wasn't physically in the same building. It helped me build my confidence back up. I paid my bills. I was able to do what I needed to do and found my next job, which of course led me on to eventually, then even 12 years later, it was 12 years after that before I came to Time Inc., where I stayed for 17 years. So I'm telling you, God is able. Let me
I hope people take that story and really let it sink in, because I have seen that movie play out. When I first moved out here to Seattle, I saw a whole group of people get laid off. There were editors, there were writers, and one of them came back and basically wrote freelance for the same company that had just laid him off and did so much better doing that. And I was like, so okay, the lesson, you're standing on your skills. It's not, it's you still have them.
You're still,
no matter what just happened to you.
Yes, and it just, it was something that happened, but it's not you. And again, for all of us, we have these very high, sometimes too high expectations of ourselves. And then being the only one in the room that looks like us, or that sounds like us, or that is our age, or all of that, puts extra added pressure on you. And you feel like you can't make any mistakes. Well, you're going to make some mistakes, and then you learn from those mistakes. And of course, we know there's a double standard. So often when white people, particularly white men, make mistakes, it's like, oh, look at that mistake he made. Isn't that wonderful? He's going to turn that around and make $1 million off the next deal. Whereas I remember making a mistake at the law firm, and I wrote my letter of resignation at 3 o'clock in the morning.
There it is.
I actually went to put it on the chair of the managing partner. And then, like you, I spent the night, many a night, both at the law firm and at Time in my office. And I was just in tears. And finally, thank God, I think an angel said to me, go get that letter, because I put it on the managing partner.
You went through with it.
And no, but I went and got it back. So the angel said, go get it back. Go get it back. So when he got it back,
you got that out your system.
So when it got it back, but it's just, we put ourselves through this.
I totally agree. I feel like the idea, at some point in my life, the idea of failure felt fatal. Like the idea of being fired, seemed like it was something you couldn't recover from, but just need the perspective or the confidence in what you have to offer to realize that wherever you are today, this is not the only thing that you can do in your life. And this is not the only opportunity you're ever going to have. And it's not the only, you can also make opportunities for yourself. Just in those moments when you're just kind of sinking into those feelings of anxiety, it seems like that's the only thing that's happening. And that's the only thing that's real. And you just can fall so deep into that when it's just,
no, I'm sorry.
I was saying, you just need someone to help you see outside of that little hole that you're looking into.
Yes. And it feels like it's only happening to you.
Yes.
And because we are so worried about being vulnerable and about appearing weak, even to our own family. Like, I didn't even tell my parents that I had been laid off.
I don't think I never told my mother about any of.
I'm only coming to them with good news. I'm not trying to come with bad news. And it's not like they wouldn't have helped me or supported me. I did tell my brother, and he was at the time in California. So I went out and spent some time with him, and he was just, as he is, just so wonderful, so supportive. And he introduced me to Peter Gabriel's music. And Peter Gabriel has a song called Don't Give Up. And to this day, that song lifts me up. And this is now 40 years ago. But I'm telling you, we are so much more capable than we know. We have so much more inside of us to express than we may ever be able to in our lifetimes. And I'm just so grateful to still be learning at 68, to still be launching businesses and meeting new people. And I just accepted a gig yesterday that I'm excited about and a little nervous about. But that's wonderful.
Yes.
I've never done anything like it before, and I've got to do it in a few weeks. So after we get off the line, I'm getting ready to go to the research. But thank you. And so do you. And I'm so proud of you and all the wonderful things you are doing and your example, because trust me, there are people not just in your network and viewing audience, but there are other people that you don't even know that are looking at you like you say you looked at me. And they are getting from you what I hope you got from me, and which I certainly got from others, to say what you just said. You've got this. You can do this. And that is like gold. It's really priceless when someone does.
Yes, it is. I was looking back at my email history. I went and searched for the word Rhonda in my email because I've had the same email address since like maybe 2007. And I just was like marveling at all the times where you gave me just like enough and like, oh, this is so wonderful. I love what you're doing. And because I have so many interests, it'll be things like, well, Rhonda, I'm starting a cooking blog and this is what I'm going to do now. And I found myself, I'm like, 24. And I'm like, I figured it out. And you're like, I believe in you. And I look forward to where you take this. And it's just like, ooh, just a little push and a little like blank. You fill in the blank. I'm looking, okay, I look forward to where you take it. And it was just like, I kept looking at all the different steps that I had taken. I would get a new job. I just wanted to keep you updated, Rhonda. This is what I'm doing now. And then you hit me with that sounds wonderful. I'm so proud of you. And I'm just like, oh, she's just been cheering for me this whole time. And it has been so lovely to stay in touch. So look, before I get back into the gushing place, I don't want to leave the anxiety conversation. I hate to keep going back and forth, but because of the times that we're in right now,
yes,
people outside of the career angst that people put on themselves, my most recent anxious episode was because of what we're experiencing right now, and they're triggered a new moment for me to think about taking care of myself so that I can keep showing up the way that I do and when I can. So what are your thoughts about how people can manage right now this notion of not falling apart? Because I had to take a whole weekend to like put the pause on everything, recalibrate all my self-care, because it just feels like one thing after the other that's hitting us right now. How are you dealing with all of this?
Well, it is one thing after the other. We've never seen a time like this where we have sort of, crazy people with no competencies and no compassion, saying that they're leaders. They're not. Real leaders don't do this. And then I really don't remember a time when science and facts were discredited. If anything, my family, we all spent our lives trying to learn the facts so that we could stand on the facts to move ourselves forward, our families and our communities. Now we have people sort of decrying and kind of trying to undermine the facts. I'm like, who does that?
Yeah.
So my co-authors and I had two webinars in the spring, and we're about to do another one next month. And one was surviving and thriving in times of uncertainty. And then the other one, right after we lost George Floyd to that just horrific and televised murder, was, called Leading with a Heavy Heart. So I think all of that is still true for all of us. Mm-hmm. We have hearts that are heavy. We are burdened by stress. We are frightened by the danger of the health crisis that we're in with no real leadership. And at the national level. Yeah. So we're having to save ourselves. But what I would say to you that I know you will resonate is that we've always had to save ourselves. So this isn't new for us. So on the one hand, yes, I'm saying take care of yourself. I am taking morning walks. I listen to music. I meditate. I have Calm on my phone.
Yes.
I daily word every morning at 5 a.m. And my stepdaughter and I exchange meditations every morning. I have another friend that sends me a text with a biblical passage on. I mean, I got some prayer warriors, because I think you need everything in your quiver and then some to try to keep yourself upright, steady during this time, because you have a family, I have a family. So you have to, in the book we say the first person you lead is you. So that's true. But then you have to know when to sit down. So I'm just saying, be kind to yourself. Do not should. This is not original with me. I don't know where I read it, but do not SHOULD on yourself.
Yes, I have been on that train for years, and it has been a lifesaver. You got to get out of the business of shoulding.
Yes.
All the things you thought that you should be doing, or the ways you should be responding or should be acting, all those expectations really are a drag. But,
yes. And where you thought you should be at this point in your life.
Yes.
I'm working with a lot of people who are using our books, and they, like we have, they're being laid off, but they may be being laid off because of the pandemic. So I'm now talking to some of our former Time Inc. colleagues who, when Time Inc. was acquired by Meredith, went over. So they were working there. And then they were just abruptly, and maybe 24 hours notice, gone after working for 20 years, some of them. So I'm working with some of them, trying to help them. But all of us, I really think we have to call upon everything we've talked about.
Yeah.
Everything we know, everything we believe. I think about my grandmother's daddy's mother, was a brilliant classical pianist who wanted to go to Oberlin, but because of the Depression, she was unable to go to college. So she was brilliant. She could add up columns of figures in her head. She was a brilliant lady who became a short order cook to help feed her family. She also was a musician, married a minister, and played organ and piano and sang. And my father was just a magnificent soloist, and my mother was his accompanist. So I just really, whenever something really rough like this, we're in a rough patch, I kind of look to my parents and grandparents. It's like, look at what they came through.
Yes.
It was rougher than this. It was crazier than this. World War II.
More violent.
Korean War. Lynchings every day. That weren't televised. We didn't have body cams then. So all kinds of unspeakable things happened. So I'm just grateful to be here. I hope we learn. I feel like the universe is speaking to us now, and we ain't listening to all these fires in California and all this stuff. It's like, what part of climate change do you not understand? But anyway, let me get off my... So I will just say, I really do believe that we must stand on all that we know and all that we have learned. And then, once again, as you said, and I'm agreeing, I think we both are saying, really be kind to yourself. You may just need a day off. You may need a week off. You may need a month off. You may need a quarter off. You may need a year. Because we're going to be dealing with this all the rest of our lives. All the rest of our lives. So you've got time to reconfigure your business plan, to finish your degree. I'm a part of a program at Union Theological Seminary called RISE. It is a mentoring program for women of color who are exploring their calls to ministry. And I'm on the board there, and I'm telling you, it's just a wonderful time. We have sisters of all stripes, Black, African-American, Afro-Caribbean, African, Asian, and Hispanic, all of whom are exploring calls to ministry, some of whom have worked like I have in another industry for years, 30, 40, 50 years. Others are coming right out of college and feel called to explore their call, but they don't know to what. So some of them want to be social justice warriors. They don't want to preach in the church. Some of them, at least two in their 20s, have planted their own churches, which look very different from the churches that you and I grew up in. So it's an exciting time. And we meet once a month. And I am learning from these ladies about ways to move from fear to faith. So I try my best when I'm really unsteady, and usually it's in the wee hours for me, is to find ways to move from my anxiety to a faith stance. And when I can do that, I feel like, all right, bring it on. All right, here we go.
There are two things that I think have been really powerful for me. And one of them you touched upon, which is looking to our past to find that strength. I was at a really low point, and one of my good friends, my former mother-in-law, Veronica, she sent me the story of Mary McLeod Bethune. And I think she could feel from the ways that I was talking, or, how I was talking, that I was getting kind of just like hopeless. And she said, take a look at this. This is the who you're looking for, the examples of people who have overcome. I read Mary McLeod Bethune's story, and I couldn't help but be like, okay, we have been in some places where things look bleak, things were bleak.
Yes.
And look at what she accomplished. Look at how she walked in her purpose. Look at how she kept going. And it just really did. It did fill me up that day. And it totally got my back straightened again. To just remember that. Yes, it's when I'm looking for examples of people who have moved through really hard times before, our people have done so. And in much worse times, the way you said. So it's just, okay, that was one tip for me of when it's getting really hard, look to the past for strength, look back to the roots. Yes. And then the second thing that I think is really helping me is saying it out loud when I'm not okay. Mm-hmm. Actually not, keeping it to myself. And it might just be, I'm just giving my friends, my close circle, a little heads up. Because what they're doing is also helping keep me accountable to me, who is my number one caretaker. I'm my number one lover. I'm my number one, person in charge of me. But my council of ladies and gents who, if I say, I'm really feeling burnt out, the next week, those same people will be like, you were talking about feeling really burnt out. Are you planning to do something about that? Are you planning to take some days off? What's your game plan? If I don't kind of expose to them where I'm at, then I've taken away their opportunity to really be a friend to me in that way. And I know that that's just a form of my self-care. Is I need other people to kind of like do the, hey girl, we see you shining, but you did say you were burning out. So put the pause button on. So, or let's commiserate together. Let's talk about things together. So community, friendship is really a big thing for me and my wellness.
Yes, I agree. And we do encourage people to have in our books success teams, but not just for your professional success, but also for your personal, your life success. So I'm glad you have that support. And I just want to mention, I've been just blessed and fortunate to meet in my years, Mrs. Rosa Parks, who came to the building where I was a law clerk, Brandon Dix Taylor in Detroit. She was in her 80s, just such a gracious lady. Shirley Chisholm got off a plane. I was in Buffalo going to speak there, and I literally was speechless. I couldn't even say hello, Miss J. I was just like, And Maya Angelou spoke in Greensboro, North Carolina. I was about 25. And I was just fortunate that someone I was seeing at the time helped to organize her event. So not only did I hear her speak to a standing room only audience, I got to go to dinner afterwards with about 30. So, she was 6 feet tall. I think you all know she was quite an imposing woman. And we each, after we all had dinner, where she held forth as long as she could, we each were given an audience, a private audience, of just a few minutes with her. And I was in a dilemma. I was trying to think about whether to go back to school. I was seeing someone that I thought I would marry, but it was not I wasn't quite so sure about the relationship. And I can tell you that in just her 30 seconds with me, just being in her presence empowered me to say, I need to cut this dude loose.
Yes.
Get out of here and go to school. I need to leave North Carolina. I know my family's here, but this isn't where I'm meant to be. And the other person, the last name I will mention that I met in my life was Leontine Price, whom I met when I was 13. So my parents went out of their way and others to give me these opportunities, and I relished them. And then my sheroes, Ida B. Wells, lived down the street from my father's mother in Chicago. So they knew each other. And she was, really the founder of the anti-lynching movement, and wrote, she had helped to, there was a flag that now they're beginning to use again, the NAACP CP Legal Defense Fund and the Southern Poverty Law Center saying another man was lynched today. Well, she wrote editorials at great risk to herself and her family about lynching, in the 30s. I mean, Who does that? Black women journalists. So I'm telling you, we stand on some fierceness and some fabulosity. So when times get rough, and I do, like you, we all have these times, and mostly I think it's when we get too tired.
Yeah.
So rest is important.
Yes. Well, I told one of my folks who were on this show a while back, if every single person came on here and told me a story about Maya Angelou, my day is made. That's all I need. And I was not breathing while you were talking. I'm like, and then when Maya say, I love that you got a chance to meet her. And yes, that all of those women I love that you say their names. I love that you call them up and remind everyone of who we are. So that is just beautiful. I could keep going with you for a while because I'm like, we didn't even talk about the music. You mentioned music so many times in your family. And I know that you are a trained singer. Like I can't let you go without hearing a little bit about what is the role of music in your life? I think even your husband he's an artist. Does he also do music? You are surrounded by it.
I am. Well, we met because I sang at his church in Brooklyn. He's an elder at Siloam Presbyterian Church, which is over 150 years old. And I must tell you that John Brown of Harper's Ferry came to his church in 1860-something to ask for money to support the raid on Harper's Ferry. And it is in the church journal that Siloam Presbyterian Church, which was then a small Black Presbyterian church, gave him $25. That's in the church record. So you can imagine, this is the church that my husband grew up in. But I met singing in a choir, and then the choir director was minister of music at Bill's church. So that's how we met. So I'm just grateful. I would say that music is in my DNA. So usually I always have music in the background of all kinds. I'm a trained mezzo-soprano. I studied piano 16 years, and I studied organ as well. So I really thought that I would be the music teacher, but it's my brother Jack, who is the minister of music at a church and who taught at Baylor in the music department for 20 years. So we exchanged lives. He thought he was going to be the business man, and I was going to be the artist. So you never know, as you said, you never know where life will take you. But I will just say that I'm grateful to be with a life partner who loves music, art, reading. He is a poet. He is an artist. Off to my left in the living room, there's this huge work of art he's working on. I don't quite know what it is, but he's working on it. And he's away, so I'm just guarding it zealously until it returns. I'm not able to do things with my hands, like I can't draw at all. But I'm grateful that for both of us, art is a sustaining force.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, thank you for sharing all of that. I have to ask you one question that I ask everyone who sits down with me. Is there another Black woman's business that you can shout out for us so we can support another Black girl?
Thank you for saying that. Absolutely. And I wish I brought down her mask, but two. Effie's Paper, EFFIE''S Paper. It's a stationery business run by my sister Link, Kaylin Johnson Chandler. And she was actually featured on the Today Show just a few weeks ago. But she had been a lawyer, a businesswoman, like us, the same kind of career, same kind of driven life. And then her grandmother loved to write and was very stylish. So she has created this line of beautiful products for writing. And during the pandemic, we're all writing each other a little more and communicating. But she also has Black Girl Magic products.
Hello.
So Black Girl Magic masks. I just gave my stepdaughter Kelly one. I have one. Pins, keychains, writing materials, pouches, makeup bags. Girl, there's some good looking stuff. So Effie's Paper, just do that. And then the other one is the artist Sylvia St. James. And I do have one of her masks here. So I hope you can see that it's Black art on your face.
Yeah.
I have 5 of these.
Yes.
See the little ladies.
Oh,
and
yes.
So Sylvia St. James, she's in every social media, just look her up. And she is a graphic design artist, but she also has major artworks that you can purchase to put, to hang in your home. So these are the two sisters that I'm the most excited about. Right.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. You just took us on a journey. We got the Black women of the past, all of your family. We're hearing about your sisters that you're writing books with, leading companies with, women making mass art. It's just such a beautiful conversation. I thank you so much for joining me and being another Black girl on this earth who has made a difference in the lives of so many people, including me. And you are just a bright light. You were named right when they hit you with that joy. When they hit you with the joy, they did it right. And you have lived up to it. You are joy and you spread joy.
Thank you, my dear.
Thank you. So there we go. This has been another Black Girl with me, Keisha G, where I am highlighting the passions, pursuits, and excellence of other Black women and girls who are doing amazing things. Rhonda Joy McLean is just a joy. And I look forward to my next conversation with another wonderful Black woman or girl in this world. If you know of one that I should be talking to and highlighting so that they can inspire others, please send me a note. Reach out to me on Instagram or on Facebook, or you can head to the website and fill out the contact form. But do let me know if there's a Black woman or a girl in your life that you think we should hear from. Thank you. Bye.